Don't believe the media narrative that court challenges to the 2020 election are over and that we just need to move along. There's nothing to see here. Yes, most courts dismiss their cases without even looking at evidence. But some rulings have been made, and there are still cases to be adjudicated. In fact, now that Joe Biden is comfortably situated in the White House and Donald Trump has dropped his own legal challenges, courts in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Virginia are starting to rule that the way widespread absentee balloting was handled in these states violated state laws. Here's an example. This month, the State Court of Claims in Michigan ruled that the Secretary of State there violated state law with her instructions on signature verification for absentee ballots. A month before Election Day, she told election clerks to presume that all signatures on absentee ballots were valid and reject only those with multiple significant and obvious inconsistencies. She was challenged in court by Republicans and one election clerk as the state legislature had not provided this guidance. Judge Christopher M. Murray ruled March 9th that Benson did not have the authority to establish such standards by herself, that it needed to be a formal process. In other words, you don't just presume. He found her in violation of the Administrative Procedures Act. It seems that under her extremely lax standards, any forged signature that was even close would have easily gotten through. If the legislature wants that low a standard, it'll have to formalize a rule to that effect. Also in Wisconsin, the state Supreme Court ruled in December that state and local officials should not have given blanket permission for voters to declare themselves homebound for the 2020 election and to skip ID requirements. One of the challenges was in the highly populated Dane County. The justices ruled that county officials, as well as Governor Tony Evers, who had issued an emergency order earlier in the year, simply didn't have the authority to do this. As John Solomon of Just the News reported, the court filings indicated that nearly 200,000 voters, 200,000, declared themselves permanently confined in the state's spring primary, which was a marked rise over prior years, and even more so in the general election. Joe Biden won Wisconsin by just 20,000 votes. In Virginia, Frederick County Judge William W. Eldridge IV ruled that it was against the law to accept ballots that arrived after Election Day without postmarks. Additional significant legal challenges yet remain. Georgia and Arizona have audits and investigations of the voting machine logs. In fact, John Solomon includes an obligatory statement about having no evidence of widespread fraud that impacted the outcome of the election. But we do know for sure that laws were broken and that the outcome certainly could have been impacted. Bill Klein of the Thomas More Society's Amistad Project told John Solomon that they are pursuing litigation over whether hundreds of millions of dollars donated by Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg to the Center for Tech and Civic Life and then routed to local election officials in key battleground states might have unlawfully influenced the election. None of this litigation is going to pry President Biden out of the White House, but Solomon presents it as the battle over how elections will be governed in the future. Finally, in some kind of odd post-election news, Sidney Powell has come up with a novel way to fend off Dominion voting systems, which has sued her for $1 trillion. That's a number that you might normally see only in Democrat spending bills. Well, actually, it's for $1.3 billion. And that's still way too small to be a Democrat spending bill, but it's a hefty chunk of change nonetheless. In a 54-page motion to dismiss, her attorneys kind of turned the tables on Dominion, which in their suit have characterized her theories as wild accusations and outlandish claims. If Powell's claims were so incredibly wild and outlandish, her attorneys are arguing that it must also be true that reasonable people would not accept such statements as fact, but view them only as claims that await testing by the courts through the adversary process, end quote. And if reasonable people would not believe what Powell was saying, then Dominion isn't harmed. The motion makes other points as well. In her motion to dismiss, writes Law and Crime, Powell does not argue that the statements are true. She claims they are not actionable because they're protected statements of political opinion. Powell also doesn't say that she lied. That'd be cause for her disbarment, which is what the state of Michigan and the city of Detroit are trying to get done. It's an interesting argument. Although to make it, she has to impugn her own claims as over-the-top crazy. Well, are they crazy? Whether reasonable people believe them or not, only an expert examination of the machines will tell us for sure. So if Dominion wants to show how off-base she is, that would be an excellent way, unless, of course, there's some reason they don't want to. So, do you think Sidney Powell is admitting that she never had the evidence to back up her claims of election fraud? Do you think the investigation voting machines in Georgia and Arizona will find evidence of significant election fraud? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel below and clicking the notification bell. If you want more of my news analysis and commentary, sign up for my newsletter at MikeHuckabee.com. It is absolutely free. Also, check out our second channel, Huckabee's Jukebox, for some great entertainment. And check back right here tomorrow for some more videos. That's it for this edition of The Breakdown. I'm Mike Huckabee.